That's always the worst thing, right? Yeah, you're old.
Did work for 40 years. Start now.
Right.
We'll call the meeting to order at 7:02 PM on Monday, November 6th, the year 2023. We have some consent agenda items, including the minutes of the October 23rd, 2023 school board meeting and the October 23rd, 2023 annual meeting and budget hearing. Also have some professional staffing recommendations and some co-curricular staffing recommendations. I would look for a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
I can do that.
Thank you, Bruce. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Tom. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. There also are some personnel items unnecessary for vote, so I would move to public comments. Angie, do we have any public comments?
We have not received any public comments prior to the meeting, and no one has registered in person.
Okay. In that case, we will move right along to the McFarland High School student report.
Hey!
There they are.
We
Welcome.
are here today. I should be sharing my screen in a second here. Okay, can you, ooh, wait, is there a way I can do this where it's like not? Okay, cool. That's fine. Okay, hey everyone. Okay, so we were supposed to have someone else from DECA come and present today, but she wasn't feeling good. So I do have a presentation that she made. So we'll be starting off with a little DECA spotlight. Mia wishes she could be here. I think she did just genuinely get sick from our trip, so it's unfortunate. What is DECA? DECA is a business and marketing club at the high school that does a bunch of community service activities as well. These include sugar can, tie blankets, cards to the nursing home, MDA, miracle minutes, things like that, as well as competition and building leadership skills that our students will use long term. Picture to the right is state from last year, a miracle minute, and ICDC from last year. Some recent events we had this last week. We had Trick or Can, where we went around to houses in the community to collect non-perishable food items for the McFarland Food Pantry. We collected 1,378 items, as well as raising $125. Oops, sorry, I gasped. With around 28 DECA members that night. The second thing we did was actually this last week. We went on our McFarland Industry and College Experience trip. Really hope I'm not lagging. Where we toured UW Stout and U of M. We met with industry speakers, went to Mall of America, and did a scavenger hunt for marketing techniques. Do you think I'm lagging? Are we good? Is the connection? Are we good?
Yeah, it's really,
Okay.
you didn't do all this in one day, did you?
Just weird.
The sound and video are slightly off, but it's not enough to be of concern.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. So we had 3 different industry speakers from Target, Avita, and Smileback Vintage, which is a local store on campus, as well as participating in an industry challenge with UW Stout. And then we had a Mall of America scavenger hunt, as you can see by some of our members participating in that. Some upcoming events we are leaving on Sunday night again to go to the Wisconsin Dells for our Emerging Leaders Conference, where there will be 900 DECA members from all across the state. And this is a great way of intro to competition and getting to meet new people. Future Quest, which is actually something I am planning for my youth apprenticeship, will be on Wednesday, November 29th at the Line Energy Center. 7th and 8th graders all around Dane County are coming to this event, where they can kind of look at different career paths, and many high school DECA members are volunteering to help that day, as pictured to the right. The next thing will be our Sports Entertainment Marketing Conference on Friday, December 8th in Green Bay, where this is also a statewide DECA thing, where we get a tour of Lambeau Field, the Packer Hall of Fame, and we're going to attend a minor league hockey game, as well as networking with all of our other DECA members in the state. There's a lot. Ryan's Roundup in early December, where we partner with Ryan, who's actually a student at the middle school, and we raised money for the Muscular Dystrophy Association, which was very successful last year as well. Mini districts on November 18th, which is our intro to competition, where actually a lot of our DECA alumni from like even 10 years back come back and help judge new members so we can get them into competition. And then lastly, we have districts, which is our first competition of the season, and that's at DeForest High School. So yeah, that is a little presentation that Mia put together about DECA. And then going back to our original slides. Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah. Oh wait. Oh, this is still mine. So this last weekend, Mod UN members went to Simon, which was hosted by St. Ignatius High School in Chicago. They participated in a variety of committees ranging from beginner to advanced. And special shout out to Ava for being an honorable mention in her ad hoc committee as Athena.
And then on November 1st, the McFarland Med Club took a field trip to Promega's BTC Institute, where they got to experience an immunology lab. They tested for salmonella and E. coli antibodies in chicken eggs. And then our MHS has started a new club to encourage students to read in their own free time with no pressure. This is led by our English teacher, Mr. Jenkins. And then upcoming this weekend is the MHS musical, Legally Blonde. And it's on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And tickets will be purchased online through the PAC website.
And then moving on to sports, we had a really big sports weekend, as Sakari's going to start with.
Buckle made it to state at Green Bay in a game against Edgewood. At state game against Pewaukee, they won in their fifth set by a narrow 2 points. This was an upset win. Sorry, it's like little on the screen. This was an upset win against the number 2 seed. McFarland also won $1,000 for selling the most fan tickets. And then on Saturday, they fell to Xavier, the 1st seed, taking home the silver ball. Congrats to our McFarland girls volleyball team for an amazing season, and thank you, seniors.
The next thing was our cross-country team. This is a little bit back. The McFarland boys cross-country team, as well as Hannah Kirch, went to state on October 21st at Wisconsin Rapids. Congratulations to the boys team for finishing 8th overall and Hannah Kirch for finishing 72nd. Next is our girls swim team, who are also heading to state. They did amazing at sectionals this last Saturday. The team took 5th place overall with the following state qualifiers. For individual events, we have sophomore Olivia Tierney in the 100 fly and senior Caroline Green in the 100 back. And then for our relays, we have the 200 medley relay of Caroline Green, Ellie Kunze, Olivia Tierney, and Izzy Tobin, and the 400 free relay of Izzy Tobin, Ellie Draper, Caroline Green, and Olivia Tierney, as pictured to the right.
And then for Connect updates, this next week on November 16th, Connect will be hosting the McFarland Equity Picnic, an event that will entail the social justice / equity groups of MHS and IMMS to come together and discuss their goals for this year. We have a representative from Jimmy Anderson's office attending this event too.
As well as for Connect updates, we have been working, that's a really big picture. We have been working really hard to get student voice involved. So new student surveys for nominating staff for participating in the bell announcements over the loudspeaker, as well as staff shout-out surveys went out on October 30th. Since then, we had received 30 shout-outs and a handful of nominations for the speaker. We then posted to our Instagram for the final votes for the top 4 nominations for bells. And McGrath won by a landslide, winning over 50% of the vote. And now he has a lovely little poem on our loudspeaker every day, 4 times a day. And yeah, I actually did I'm gonna stop screen sharing because I want to be able to see again. Okay, I did have a question. I know you guys, can they see us? Okay, I know you guys all got the invitations to our equity picnic, so I was wondering if any of you were planning on attending so I can add that to our sheet.
Looks like Mr. Howard.
Okay, cool.
I will be there.
You're
I
a
will-
guest speaker.
I heard.
You'll have to be there.
I will
I will
also
be out
be
of
there.
town, sorry.
Angie Straub will
I'm
also
out
do.
of town also.
Okay, so
And I
Angie,
need a reminder when it is, I'm sorry.
The 16th.
16? I probably would be there.
okay. Cool. And then I was wondering if you guys had any questions for us at this time. What's going on?
Anybody? Got anything? Megan? Well, I don't know that we have any questions, but, the DECA organization it's just incredible, all the different events and, programs that you go to. Just kind of a out there question, do you have any idea if our DECA enrollment is one of the larger enrollments around the state, or are there, do the big schools have much larger DECA groups?
So I'm like in Baxter for District 3. We're pretty medium sized. I would say we're like not small by any means.
Okay.
We have around 135 this year, so we jumped a little bit. I think the biggest chapter in the state has like 300, 350. But something that some of the other schools do is they mandatory enroll all of their business students in DECA and count it as a course fee, which is not something we do at McFarland. We don't limit for business students, but we also don't require it.
Well, you just are doing a fantastic job. And that's from someone who was here, when we had 15 kids in DECA.
Yeah, it's huge. We do a lot. I know we have 2 trips this week, or like in the last week, including MICE, and then I'm going to ELC as well, and then plus Future Quest and all of those different events that are coming up. It's been a lot.
Well, I'm sure it's a lot, but I'm sure in the end, it's well worth it.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything?
Can you just elaborate on what the scavenger hunt was like up at the Mall of America?
So our advisors came up with this big list of different things to find. Some of them were like digital displays, examples of odd and even pricing. Some of them were as simple as as fun as talk to a manager of a store and get a picture with them. And then the group that won were juniors. It was Matthew Sturts and his foreign exchange student Wisdom. They killed it. They completed the whole scavenger hunt. No one else did that. They absolutely smashed it out of the park. We posted on our Instagram, and we actually got Mall of America to like it, so I was pretty proud of that because I made the Instagram post.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
You too.
Okay, moving on. I believe informational items, the forward exam data and annual reading report. Melissa, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I believe last week or earlier, probably last week, you received a copy of the reading report from Mr. Tarnitzer, and you have a copy of it in front of you tonight. I'm going to spend some time talking about our forward exam and pre-ACT and ACT data from last spring, and then also tell you about the work that we have going on in literacy at all of our schools this year. As we look at the data, I'm going to share lots of celebrations about it. I also want to acknowledge that we always have room to improve, and that there's more improvement that we're hoping to see when the students take their tests again this coming spring. But as I pointed out in the report, and as you can see in the table, our scores are nearly back to pre-COVID levels in most of the grades. Students gained in their percent of students who are proficient, they gained in their gap above the state, and they gained in their rank in Dane County. That's across the board, every grade, 3rd through 8th grade. Some particular highlights to point out: if you look at the diagonal numbers along the row, in the spring of 22, the 3rd graders, 38% of them were proficient. That same cohort of students, 51% of them were proficient as 4th graders. Likewise, kind of going backwards, the 3rd graders in 2021, they have jumped over the last 3 years from 31% of them being proficient to 44%, to last spring, 51% of them being proficient. So huge gains are being made in literacy across the board. There's maybe one spot where it dipped a tiny bit, but a tiny bit. And then if you look before COVID, we're seeing the percent of third graders who are proficient last spring is higher than the percent of third graders who were proficient before COVID. Close at fourth grade, close at fifth, close all the way, the rest of the way down, closest at eighth grade, getting back to that pre-COVID number.
Do you feel that happened maybe a little quicker than expected?
It was always going to be hard to tell. The impacts of COVID were so long-ranging. I don't know if I would have made a prediction, but as we were planning during those years, while we were doing virtual learning, the message we were getting was accelerating student learning. We were trying to make sure that students were not just getting a year's worth of learning in 1 year, but getting more than a year's worth of learning to catch up for the time that they missed out of the classroom. We certainly knew already, but relearned during that time just how important the relationship between students and teachers are in how much they can learn.
I think there was a lot of gloom and doom, early on that we were never going to be able to catch up. Well, keep up the
Yep.
good work, I guess.
Yeah, I'll say thank you on behalf of all the teachers, certainly.
Please. Absolutely.
Moving on to ACT, a quick update. The 9th and 10th graders previously took ACT Aspire. That changed statewide to an assessment called pre-ACT. Very similar assessment, but just a change in what's required as the state test for 9th and 10th grade. Our students with pre-SAT, ACT, if I've been saying SAT, I meant ACT every time I said it. Pre-ACT and ACT, we have their scores there. Again, a lot of places we are back to pre-pandemic levels for our 9th, 10th, and 11th graders. Something that we continue to look at is what's happening from 9th to 10th to 11th grade with those cohorts of students, and why aren't we seeing gains in the percent of students proficient across the board? I know that's something that our new high school principal and administration team have talked to me about, trying to brainstorm. How can we make sure that these assessment results accurately reflect what students know and are able to do? We are happy to dig into the skills, and we are digging into the skills, but we're not yet confident that these are reflecting what students are actually capable of. There's motivation issues to think about, just a variety of things that come up with high schoolers when you're asking them to sit down on a computer at 9th and 10th grade for a half a day to take a test. And then juniors, originally when we started giving the ACT as the statewide test, juniors took it very seriously. It was a free shot at getting a great ACT score. We hear now more juniors who are saying, well, I know I'm gonna take it again, so I'm not even gonna try. Or, I've already gotten the score that I want, why does this stay matter? So working on some motivation pieces with them to let them know that this is, you can always improve. This is another great chance to do your best and continue to show us what you know. Now, along with all of that, I want to preview what's going on in literacy classes outside of these assessments. We certainly want to take the assessment results seriously, but I'm actually more excited this evening to share what we're doing in classrooms. So I'll work backwards from the high school, which is a little bit out of order from what you're seeing there. At the high school, the English department is continuing their work, aligning their expectations and rubrics to the state standards, and also have a big focus on their language standards, which would be grammar and mechanics and those skills. Coming up, the English and social studies departments at the high school are going to get together to align their writing expectations and make sure that they're using similar language and similar expectation for 9th graders, 10th graders, 11th graders, and that their expectations are raising each year. They're also doing disciplinary literacy professional development at each of their professional development days with the full staff. That is thinking about how do you read like a mathematician? How do you read like a scientist? What are the skills that you need to know to read a piece of music? How do you read a manual in tech ed? And thinking about what are those skills for the experts in content for them to be able to transfer that literacy knowledge to their students. Finally, at the high school this year, every year our teachers need to write a student learning objective, and this year they wrote one that was focused on literacy for each of the teachers at the high school. So there's a really consistent, regular focus on literacy outcome for all of our students, and we're excited to combine that with test prep strategies, test motivation strategies to see what our students can do on pre-ACT and ACT this spring. it keeps getting exciting. At the middle school, working our way down the grades, focus on disciplinary literacy continues there at the middle school. That has been ongoing work for the middle school over the last several years. Our ELA teachers are continuing with the units of study and increasing their fidelity to implementation, working on getting more units in, more bends of those units, and having more time to conference with students one-on-one to make sure that they know where their students are at and what their next steps for growth are. Teachers have noticed for several years that our current curriculum needed more help in the language, the grammar, mechanics pieces that I talked about at the high school as well. And they wanted that to be a new report card standard for them this year and really be a big focus. What we decided over the summer was, instead of having teachers develop all of that from scratch, which takes a ton of time, we've adopted a program to use as a start. We're going to evaluate how it's going and decide, is that a program we want to continue with? Is it seeing the gains that we're hoping to see? But the program is called IXL. It is an adaptive online program. Teachers can select which lessons they want to assign teachers. It is aligned with the units of study or with the Wisconsin State Standards. Teachers can have students do it independently. They can have them do it as a whole group. And when students are working on it, when they have a question, they can pause the students in their class, do a quick mini lesson on subject-verb agreement, for example, and then have them keep going with their lessons. So far, we're beginning to survey students on their opinion of, do you feel like you're learning something from this? We don't take exactly everything that middle school students take and make our decisions based on that, but we do use it as one piece of the puzzle along with feedback from our teachers, and we'll look at our ELA data in the winter and spring to see if we're seeing the gains that we hope to see in grammar and mechanics. A theme continues as we go backwards to Wabisa. They also are continuing with units of study, and to connect that back to the data that we had, I was talking about the gains that we've seen for cohorts of students from 3rd to 4th to 5th grade in ELA. Those gains are happening with us using our Tier 1 instruction of units of study. So I know the units of study have received a lot of press recently and nationally, and people talking about that not serving our students well. Currently in McFarland, our data is showing that what we are doing with that curriculum, the way that we're using it and implementing it, it is working for our students. Now, I monitor that very carefully. Every summer when that data comes out, if we start to see something different, then we might need to do something different in our classrooms. But currently, we're growing from 3rd to 4th to 5th grade, so I don't see a reason to move away. Now that said, just like at the middle school, the units of study is lacking in word study and phonics and things like that. So this summer, a group of Wabisa teachers got together and evaluated different options, including, again, creating our own curriculum. And what they decided was, again, to adopt a program. So they've adopted 95% group core phonics. It is designed to be given for about 30 minutes every day, and we just don't have that much time in our schedule to also attend to the reading and writing standards. So we're splitting the lessons over 2 days, about 15 minutes one day, 15 minutes the next to complete a lesson. We're going to figure out how that goes this year, learn more about the specifics of what's in each unit, and then next year figure out, can we combine these two together? Can we skip that one? How do we want to make sure we're fitting 30 minutes a day into 15 minutes a day the most effectively? What's really great about that is it is developmentally appropriate. At 3rd grade, it's a lot of phonics focus, so reviewing those skills that they learned in K2 and making sure they have letter sounds and vowel pairs and all of those things figured out for their spelling and their reading. As it goes up, by the time they get to 5th grade, they're focusing on passages that build content knowledge while reviewing vocabulary, morphology, which was a new word for me. It's the study of words and their parts, like prefixes, suffixes, Greek and Latin roots. All of that's included, close reading strategies, and knowledge building. They recently read a passage about World War I in 5th grade and then looked at the vocabulary word of isolation and provocation related to that. They read one, a 5th grade teacher told me they didn't know about it, I'd never heard, but the Kentucky mobile horse libraries. I got all of the words wrong. But basically in Kentucky in rural areas, the books weren't available to all of the people, so they put books on horseback and then traveled around with mobile libraries like that. So they're reading passages about that content, studying the words that are in it, doing close reading and learning the strategies, along with, again, the morphology of the words. Finally at Wabisa, I'm not even at CEPS yet, finally at Wabisa, we have a group of about a dozen teachers who just started tonight a teacher study group related to a new book that was published this fall called Shifting the Balance. Our board members who have been here for a while may remember that at K2, we did a Shifting the Balance TSG before COVID. The publishers, or the authors, came out with a new copy that's designed for 3rd through 5th grade teachers. So it's meant to take a balanced literacy classroom or a balanced literacy mindset, bring in the science of reading, and shift the practices to be more aligned with what we're learning with science of reading. So they're reading that book together, making commitments, celebrating what they already have in place that's aligned with the science of reading, and making commitments for what they can continue to improve on. With all of that work at Wabisa, I am sure that we're going to continue to see the positive direction with scores for our students in the spring. And they're going to have the benefit of having students coming from CEPS with the most comprehensive, systematic, and explicit curriculum that we've ever had at CEPS. We've adopted Wonders at grades kindergarten, 1st and 2nd this year. It is intense. The teachers will tell you they are busy, their students are busy, they are spending every minute trying to get through the lessons that are dense. Particularly our 2nd grade students had something different at kindergarten and 1st grade, and now we're adjusting to this as 2nd graders, but they're really taking it in stride. I happen to have a 2nd grader who lives at my house, and she's using words like antonyms and finding text evidence, which are words that she has never brought home, and her sister, when she was in 2nd grade, never brought home either. So they're really learning those deep skills of literacy that are going to set them up for success going into Wabisa. Teachers at CEPS are also continuing their LETTERS training. LETTERS is deep science of reading learning. That is one of the trainings that is recommended in the new Act 20, which is an early literacy act passed by the state legislature. I was just talking to a colleague at a conference this morning, and he said, "What have you decided to do for your Act 20 training that you have to do?" And I said, "We already started Wonders last year." And he said, "Oh, you're so lucky." So appreciations to Greg for his leadership, to Lori and to Brooke for bringing that to us, and we're even ahead of the game as far as the requirements of the new law come. Finally, at CEPS, they're continuing with Haggerty, which is a curriculum for phonemic awareness. Phonemic awareness is what you can do with your eyes closed. You can think about all of the sounds the letters make without ever having to look at the printed letters to start reading. And it's really one of those foundational skills that we decided to stick with what was working for us with phonemic awareness, even though it's also in Wonders. We're going to have to figure out over the next year or so which parts of phonemic awareness will we keep with Haggerty and which will we do in Wonders, and how do we blend the two together. All of that is to say, yes, the data looks much better, but we are hoping that it is going to continue going up because of the dedication of all of our educators and the leadership of our teacher leaders and administrative team. Any questions for me about literacy?
I just have a couple questions. Melissa, you talked about, where is it now? 95% group core phonics at Wabisa. And it's billed as daily work, but because of the schedule, you only do it twice a week.
Yep.
How does that impact the fidelity? And how do we know if it works or does not work if we don't have that type of fidelity? Since fidelity is a huge thing here.
Certainly. So we're doing it every day for half the amount of time. So it's designed
Okay.
at 30 minutes a day, and we're doing 15 minutes a day, so it's going to be split over 2 days to do one lesson. The research is based, it has, I think, gold level ESSER backing, which is the government rates curriculum to know what quality they are. We won't know, the fidelity there was teachers who were doing it who had the time to do 30 minutes every single day. So we are going to have to see how it goes and how students are able to transfer that knowledge. Unfortunately, with the schedule that we have and the number of reading and writing standards we also have to attend to, in addition to that vocabulary, morphology, all of that background knowledge, we just don't have the minutes in the day to do 30 minutes a day on that.
And I completely understand that. But again, yeah, within a day, the curriculum is what I consider overloaded. Because we know we can't squeeze it all in. You mentioned Act 20.
Yes.
And we're ahead of the game.
Yep.
What about the universal screening that they're talking about? Can you just elaborate a little more on that?
Yeah, we have universal screeners in place already. We use FastBridge, which is an assessment students in kindergarten through 8th grade take 3 times a year in reading and in math. Now, Act 20 is saying that there is going to be a mandated reading assessment in grades K through 3 that students will have to take, and DPI hasn't told us what assessment that is yet, or if we'll have flexibility. Previously, the early reading screener was called PALS. That company doesn't exist anymore. It disbanded just this last summer. And so there isn't yet notification from DPI if it will be one assessment that's mandated for every district across the state, or if we'll get to pick from a selection, and whether or not FastBridge would count or be included in that or not.
The most recent information, and it does change by the minute,
Yes, it does.
that we have heard was that it will be a new screener developed by DPI. That's the last I heard, and there won't be flexibility. But that is very ambitious.
And that's what I heard on Saturday also.
Why are they trying to do that? I mean, is there something broken that they're trying to fix?
Well, part of the law is requiring a common universal screener. So we're hoping that the state would say, and they still may, that here's 3 you can pick from, and one of them would be FastBridge. That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah. It's interesting, the speaker on Saturday was talking about that and the universal assessment. And he was talking about its potentially strong that a whole class may fail. Because that whole criteria is based on the whole state.
Yes.
You know, the McFarland's out there, the Milwaukee's out there, so it'll be interesting.
And the assessments, like FastBridge, for example, when they talk about letter sounds, it's how many letter sounds or how many letter names they can recognize in a set amount of time. And so previously, when we assessed letter names, for example, we'd let the kids have as long as they need to say, you know, that's an A, that's a B, that's a C. But the FastBridge protocol is how many of them can they say quickly? Because they know that automaticity of letters really helps with their fluency of reading. So they both need to be able to do it fluently and to do it eventually. So we actually started assessing the kids both ways. We'd give the FastBridge assessment, see how many they knew in a minute, but then also give them as long as they could take so that we know, well, how many of them do they know eventually? And are we really working on continuing to have them learn more letter sounds or have them get more fluent with the sounds they already know?
What was the outcome of that data?
It improved. When the kindergarten, that's a kindergarten assessment mostly. We give it to some 1st or 2nd graders who are lagging with skills, but at kindergarten, when the teachers started practicing and teaching with fluency, the scores in that went up. They were able to see improvement by just practicing the skill the way it's assessed.
Yeah.
Anything else I can help with?
I'll mention my bias also.
Certainly.
Whenever they're talking about statewide assessments, I wish we could spend as much time in social play, free time, to build up the kids' social interactions, life skills. It would improve their mental health, because developmentally, that's where they are. And I know we don't have any control over it, but the state should be ashamed of themselves. Try and put everyone in that same funnel at the same time. Because I do believe if we could take each child where they're at, some of them probably wouldn't even receive interventions because they aren't at that point yet. We wouldn't have as many kids at risk, maybe even potential referrals down the road. But that's my bias. So,
Thank you.
and I'm glad to see that we're trending in the right direction. I think we probably all agree that we'd like to see what's going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
As we compare it with other Dane County schools.
Yep.
But we certainly are trending in the right way.
And a reminder, the results we'll see a year from now, it'll reflect the work that 3rd grade's doing for those 3rd graders, but it won't yet reflect anything about Wonders, because those students, it'll take them another year before they had Wonders as 2nd graders, and they get through 3rd grade, and then they take the 3rd grade assessment. So it's slow to show up on the test, but since we have work going across K-12 in literacy, we're still confident that we're gonna see gains.
As long as we have faith, I think, you know, you just go at whatever speed you need to go, and what happens at the end of the day I think we're all confident it's gonna be, what we've been looking for.
Yeah.
Great job so far.
Thank you, and I'm excited for you to hear more. It'll be a lot of repeated information when the principals come up to share their school improvement plan, so I apologize for taking some of your talking points. But it is really an aligned effort to work on literacy across the district.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you very much, Melissa.
Thanks.
Thank you.
I
Okay.
wanted to make one comment.
Oh, sorry, Megan.
No, that's fine. You can still go, still go back to your seat. But I just wanted to say that this report is always really fascinating to me. And the thing that impresses me most is that we saw the dip in the numbers. And, it's not all about numbers. And you all recognized that. And we pivoted quickly. And we're already seeing improvement from that. And just hearing you speak about the reading and the different skills and how they're taught and the curriculum is just, as a parent and also as a school board member, it is so good to hear that there's such expertise in the district following this, because it's such a foundational skill. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Megan.
And I'd be glad to share that the first day that I came to this district a few years ago, I told the reading specialist, for me, literacy is the number one curriculum that kids must succeed in.
Yeah,
So we continue to strive towards that.
absolutely.
Okay, moving on. We have school improvement plan presentations, and I guess we can go, unless you have a particular order, we'll start with Greg.
Well, we have a kind of a process, we're gonna have them all at once. So get
Okay,
ready.
that will work better.
Yes. So I'm gonna hand this out to you before I start talking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Audience today. Okay, so here we are for our annual school improvement presentations. What I just handed out, Megan, just so you know, was what was in the minutes about the school improvement presentation, so nothing new there. I'm just going to orient you to this document, talk to you about the format of our presentation tonight, and then we'll get started. So the document starts with some acronyms that are included there. Just so you know, we talk in EduSpeak, we try not to, but if there's something that you're like, what is that? Look there first, and hopefully it will be there. On the back side of that is a new document to you, and it's called, we call them our KPIs, our Key Performance Indicators. And these are based on the strategic plan. They're metrics that we are going to track over time to demonstrate the impact of our strategic plan. We don't have specific goals identified for each of those. That would be many, many goals, but we do plan to track that throughout time. So what you see is our baseline from last year. I'll reference each of those as we go through our time today. And then included in the rest of your packet is each building's school improvement plan. The presentations are really going to focus on our mission, which is proudly displayed behind me, meeting the needs of every learner every day in pursuit of our vision, which is creating an equitable and inclusive community committed to student belonging, achievement, and growth. So what I'm going to do is, similar to the format from last year, I will introduce one of the pillars, so the 4 pillars, and then each building will spend a few minutes talking about some of the things that they're doing with the pillars. Our goal is really that you are going to have a sense of the continuity across the district, our collaborative efforts. So notice throughout the presentations, one principal may say one thing and another person says in addition to what they say, because a lot of things are being done in each building, which is important for that collaborative efficacy. So we'll start, I will introduce our first pillar. I ask that we allow all 4 principals to present and then save our questions for at the end of each pillar. So we'll have time for questions, 4 times throughout the presentation, but you may have a question that's answered by another administrator. So our first one is educational excellence, and the objective there is to improve academic achievement with a focus on literacy and closing gaps for traditionally underserved groups. That's right out of our strategic plan. You'll notice that all of the school learning objectives focus on literacy in this specific area. Our KPIs, our key performance indicators, focus on reducing that gap, just as the objective says, using our Wisconsin statewide ELA assessments related to race, disability, and gender. We're also going to be administering a student survey in grades 4 through 12, and one of the indicators we're going to collect baseline data on for this year is called the Connection Index, which is another way to think of belonging, and that's about students reporting that they feel they belong at school because they have healthy relationships and they're actively involved in school-related activities. So that's an assessment, a survey that will be administered this January. So now I'm going to turn it over to Greg, who's going to kick us off, and then we'll go through each building in order.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Good to see you all. So as Aaron mentioned, under educational excellence, Melissa has already wonderfully shared all of the action steps that CEPS and the other schools are taking when it comes to literacy specifically. And so I'm going to give you a little context for what you see with CEPS under the action steps. As a K through 2 school, not taking the forward exam, we operate under what's called alternate accountability with the DPI. And with the DPI, we're required to set a goal in literacy, in math, and in on track to graduation, and our level, that's attendance. And so since we are already obligated to write those goals, monitor, and then report out at the end of the year, that's what you'll see listed under CPS's action steps. So more of a goal format instead of action steps. But really what we're looking at is we're looking for students to improve overall in literacy and in math. You'll see I put last year's data on the left-hand column. We set lofty goals. We increased the goals this year from last year. Is it where we want to be? No, but are we working hard to continually improve, as you've already heard as a theme? Yes. Math isn't necessarily a focus for us because without being more intentional than we already are, we're doing well every single year. Same for attendance. We have systems, curriculum, processes in place that are working in those areas, which is why a lot of our eggs are going towards the literacy basket. So we're going to continue with our commitment to staff learning around equity and diversity through our partnership with the Center for Culturally and Linguistically Responsive Teaching, or CLR, as you might have heard. And then finally, we are working as a district on coordinating efforts at the building and district level to organize academic, social, emotional, and behavior systems into a comprehensive service model that all students access. And that is EMLSS, or Equitable Multi-Level Systems of Supports. Maybe if you've been in education for a while, formerly MTSS, formerly RTI.
All right. So over at Wabisa, last year, 22-23, Melissa talked earlier about all of the literacy pieces. So our staff was highly engaged in that process. It was very inclusive. We did have representative groups. And then at times there was the entire literacy department involved. And as Melissa said, we implementing 95% core as our word study group. And of course, there's ongoing learning throughout the school year, actually every week through the PLC process that our teachers engage in on Thursdays. So that's ongoing learning, also PD time as well. Last year, we began examining our spotlight time. Spotlight is a time that we have in our day. It's a 30-minute time. I think CPS has a Spartan time, kids getting what they need, extending learning, supporting learning gaps where they exist. So we started looking at that last year and really kind of narrowed our focus on, okay, what is it that we want to have that time be used for? Because it's 30 minutes, as you heard earlier tonight, like 30 minutes is 30 minutes in a day, and so we wanted to maximize that. So we got clarity on that. continuing this year, Greg mentioned building our EMLSS team. So we're really developing that both at the building level, taking representative groups at the district level, and Spotlight certainly fits within that framework as well as supporting students. So we're going to continue to grow that as well. And then lastly, in 22-23, we began examining our behavioral structures and our response plans. We know that as part of educational excellence, we need supportive, safe classroom environments so learning can happen. So we began that last year, and then this year, as Greg mentioned, across K-12, we are implementing the progressive response behavior model. And like I said earlier too, that's ongoing learning that we're having throughout the school year. We're now in three different versions of behavior norming is what we're calling it. So like as a staff, taking a look at certain behaviors and how are we interpreting that behavior, how are we responding to that, so we're as consistent as possible. And that will continue throughout the year as well. That's Wabisa.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm going to speak with you all about Indian Mound. So again, a lot of the things that you're going to hear me say are similar to what you've already heard. So I will try not to be super repetitive. But looking at last year, we really started digging into our equitable multi-level systems of support, which we're calling EMLSS. And we really at IMMS dug in this summer and had a lot of summer hours with this team, really digging into our process. And so really what it is we have, everybody has this tier 1 of our literacy or any kind of curriculum, and then where all students have that access. And then tier 2 and tier 3 are really about students that need a little bit more. So we are working on our process using data to guide our decision making and looking at specific research-based interventions for students, both in math and reading. And additionally, back to that tier 1, that's where the IXL program that Melissa talked about comes into play, which is really new for us, and it really meets some of those the needs that we have around the foundational lagging skills. So that's the MLSS is a big project, both at IMMS and all the other schools in the district is working on that as well. Another area that we are focusing in on is really looking at our student voice and our equity work. And we started doing some very intentional work last year around teaching and learning around hate speech, inclusion, identity through our clubs and groups. This year we are doing the same, but we're enhancing that. Again, our equity team, our equity action team, is working closely with Brittany Brazel to develop lessons to share with our students, and we are also trying to align them all K-12 as well. Right now at Indian Mound, we are working specifically on lessons around identity and lessons on hate speech. So we're kind of using that in combination with that progressive response to behavior that Corey spoke about and the CLR practices that we're all learning. We're also, this is down a little ways, but we're also continuing to grow in our professional development in that area. And then finally, another area to kind of bring in that we're super excited about for educational excellence this year is our implementation of the WEB program, which is where everyone belongs. So as you all know, the first day of school this year was for 6th grade only. And we have about 50-ish 8th grade students who were chosen and then applied to be leaders for the WEB program. And so on the first day of school, we invited our 6th graders in, and our WEB leaders, our 8th graders, were the ones who were to guide their way. There was a big assembly, lots of fun music, games, community building. They are small groups, and they're getting together throughout the year to continue to support our 6th graders during our time and other lessons as the 6th graders go throughout their years. So we're going to continue with this program, keeping going, and our student services and some of our teachers are the leads of this program. And that's all from Indian Mound.
All right, on to the high school. Some of the things that were identified from last year, you'll see there were some of the work that they did to identify standards-based grading needs, and then working to align those efforts starting from the middle school and vertically align those up through 12th grade at the high school level. And then they also engaged in the CLR binder study, which is one half of the CLR work. And this year, you're going to learn that we're moving on and doing the other half of that PD. So some of our action steps planned for this year is, you heard from Melissa that each of our departments has developed student learning objectives that are focused on disciplinary literacy. So each department has their own PLC, professional learning community. They're able to meet, and they created their own student learning objective for their department. Each department is slightly different, but they are all focused around our disciplinary literacy goals as a school. Next up there, you'll see that we are doing some literacy and CLR PD. Our literacy PD is heavily led by Erin Fisher, our literacy coordinator, and our CLR professional development is led by a few of our teacher leaders. We are going to be offering these throughout the entire year at each of our PD days that we have each month. So we've had 2 of them. We've got another one coming up here at the end of this week. So we'll be continuing that work throughout this year and relying on those leaders to lead us through those professional developments. And then lastly there, you'll see that we, likewise at all the other 3 buildings, our universal implementation of the progressive response to behavior plan. That's been huge at the high school level for us to be able to use that as a pillar to keep coming back to as we deal with student behaviors and our response to them, to make sure that we're calibrating. We're the one building that works with 2 associate principals, so they've been able to calibrate a lot with each other and be able to compare notes as they deal with student and respond to student behaviors and work with our staff. It's really helped us be able to be transparent with some of our decision making, not only to staff members and student, but also home, as we contact home, as we work with those students, to be able to give a sort of why and be able to point to this resource and this tool that helps us navigate some of those sometimes pretty tricky situations. And obviously, being able to set up a supportive structure like that allows our students and staff to be able to strive for that educational excellence, which is why it falls under that first pillar there.
Excellent. So now you've heard from each of the buildings on educational excellence. So if you have any questions about what you've heard so far, now would be the great time to ask them.
I have a couple questions. Greg, under your updates on progress in 2023, I see that. But then your action steps, the second bullet, additional goals for math, 80%. That'll be an increase of 1%. But attendance is like 4% less than what it was this year. Is there a rationale why we would have a goal of less than what we were able to achieve the year before?
Yeah, that is a great question. Kind of, and I'm not saying this is right, if that makes sense, but we kind of have used 80% as the standard for math, 90% as the standard for attendance at the beginning of the year. Then with the alternate accountability, though, we do have the opportunity in the middle of the year, in the winter, to look at the mid-year data and revise the goals. So we do plan to do that in the middle of the year. Are we on track to 80? If so, we need to increase it. If we're not, then we need to do something about it. Same for attendance. So the literacy goal had a little more intention behind the numbers we ended up percentage-wise. The math and the attendance, since they do well on their own without focus on them, we kind of use those as a standard, but very likely, which is probably your hunch, they're going to increase when we look at middle of the year data.
Well, I certainly appreciate the flexibility.
Yeah, definitely.
Where you and the staff will take a look at that to see if
Yep.
that might or could be changed.
Absolutely.
And then the only other question I have is for high school. I was excited to hear that you include home and families, making connections with them, communicating back and forth, because that's really vital.
Agreed.
Across the whole board, but I'm glad to hear you say that.
Yeah, you bet.
Go ahead, Kate.
I have a couple questions. Well, you asked the same one as me for Conrad Albium, so Greg, you're good. I don't have any questions for you. Corey, just wondering, your action step of building capacity and shared leadership of your EMLSS team with increased staff participation. What's the % of staff participation right now?
Sure. Well, we'll take a step back and say that EMLSS traditionally has been viewed as an intervention only. Now, that doesn't mean philosophically that we weren't always pushing it, but we are now increasing it. So we have, I would say probably double that. So we have our instructional coach is part of that, coordinators. So percentage of our whole staff, probably I'd say about 5-ish to 8%.
Okay.
Which in the past, again, it was a very, very small number of people.
Okay. And then Jamie, well, 2 questions. IXL, is that a resource for both teachers and students?
Yes, so it is a program that students participate in. It's a web-based program that students take kind of a, like an overall assessment. What is the word they use?
Diagnostic.
Thank you, diagnostic at the beginning. And then it kind of shows which skills students need a little bit more in. And then the teacher can assign those skills to the student based on the area that they're lacking in.
Okay.
And so then the teachers can see all of the results, and then they can use that to either, we can use it for intervention for our tier 2, tier 3, mostly tier 2, but we also are using it at a universal level, like if, the 8th grade ELA teacher is looking at word work and these 8th grade students, because many of them, due to COVID, didn't get the word work they needed, they can say, okay, we're gonna pause for a second, we're struggling with this area, and so we're gonna give a lesson on this area. So
Okay.
the students participate in it, and then the staff use it for a resource.
Okay, that makes sense. And then with your clubs and groups, as kind of an update on your progress, I'm just wondering how much you guys are trying to get like the middle school and the high school groups maybe to meet and kind of work together so
Yeah.
that some of the younger students feel like they have older students that they can go to. if they
Yeah,
need
so the
to.
equity picnic is just coming up. We're doing, so our PCU, GSA, and AOA are all going up to the high school for the equity picnic. I know there are a few times a year where the other affinity groups get together as well. Last year, they had a couple events that they did together. I'm trying to think of, a lot of times when there's bigger events or events happening at the high school, they'll include us and invite us in. We also have times where we have, we just had a bunch of high schoolers come to our AOA, it's Alliance of Allies, come into our AOA group and talk about high school and what it's like in high school. So it's a lot of kind of inviting both ways.
Okay. All right, so this is my last question. That's for you, Brett.
Yeah.
You don't really know me yet, but I'm very passionate about standards-based grading. So my question is, I know that you're working to align the efforts between grades 6 through 12. What are you doing in the high school to align between departments? So how is that measured? Are you looking halfway through the semester and saying, okay, why are the majority of students getting this grade in this class versus this grade in this class?
Yeah, I will say that we know that our standards-based grading practices is a growth area for us, and that's something that we're learning within our administrative team this year. I do know also that inside of our departments, we do a lot of kind of calibrated grading. So I'll use biology, for example, because I walked in on some of this today. We've got multiple teachers that teach biology. They'll give a common assessment at the end of whatever unit it might be, and they'll get together and do some of their grading together to make sure that similar responses, no matter what teacher they have, are getting a similar grade. Now, between departments, from maybe the science department to the English department, that's definitely an area where we don't have quite as much alignment, that we definitely are trying to work to be able to get that similar across the board. We also realize that from department to department and discipline to discipline, you've got different types of assignments that are going to be graded slightly differently, and there's just going to be a different type of work that students are producing. So that's a tough ask, but one that we're going to continue to work on. So I wouldn't tell you that we're we're where we want to be right now with standards-based grading. We know that we've got growth to be had, but that's going to be continued effort for us as we get going.
So is there somebody, or who's checking in within the department to make sure that, you know, in biology, it seems like the various teachers have students performing kind of at the same levels in their class, so that not everyone's getting, you know, A's versus C's, and if more people in one classroom are getting C's versus the other, why is that? And
Sure. And our department chairs line up a lot of those kind of department meetings or those PLC meetings, so similar biology teachers. So they'll be the ones that line up a lot of those and are able to answer some of those initial questions. And then we've got administrators that oversee, one of the three of us kind of oversees each department, so is able to kind of be that go-between between the department and that administration as well. So I'd be tough to give you an exact person because it is kind of a team effort, but it is definitely something that we work together with those different departments on to try to make sure that we have that grading calibration, because we know that's an important piece and we want everyone, regardless of what teacher they have, to have similar experiences, not only in the class but in the grade they receive.
okay, I'm done.
I have one more question. Jamie, you talked about web-based programming, but this question is for all of you. Do any of you use or have students use AI?
I'm sure they do, yeah. I mean, we're just diving in, right, with AI and trying to teach students how to use it in a helpful way. You know, with English language arts, it definitely could be a helpful tool and a tool that could maybe not be so helpful in some ways. And so I think, yeah, too helpful. High school maybe even more so, but the middle school, we're trying to, and as staff, we're trying to use it in different ways that are helpful for our own use and our jobs too. So as we're getting to know it, we're able to share with our students even more.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of professional development out there right now for teachers as well to be able to learn how to use it for good within your classroom, as well as to monitor student work to make sure that it's not lending too good of a hand towards a final product. And so, yeah, I mean, it'll be here for the years to come, so we got to embrace it and figure out a way to use it to our benefit.
Yeah, I just haven't heard that much about it, so thanks. Corey?
Yeah, I would say at our level, I mean, we haven't intentionally taught it, but I think there's elements of it that are in play for our kids and for us for a long time. I mean, our kids do a lot of speech to text. The text comes out, it starts identifying, you know, where there are errors or continued on sentence. I mean, that's AI, right? It's word prediction. So, you know, things like that. But we haven't actually done any sort of like intentional teaching of it or any programs.
Greg, anything?
To the extent that we're talking about AI for, you know, those purposes right now, I'm not aware of CPS students using it.
Okay.
And
Thanks.
that is not an acronym, that is included in your handout. Stands for artificial intelligence. Artificial intelligence.
Megan, do you have anything? Any questions, comments?
I don't have any questions specifically. I can tell you that a lot of this is a lot of the goals and improvements. I can definitely see district-wide these efforts and these specific, you know, efforts for each school. I can definitely see that, you know, showing up in what's coming to parents and in the emails, or not the emails, but the newsletters that we see and that you share with the board. So that's really, I mean, sometimes I think in probably other districts, these improvement plans may or may not be as robust as they are for ours. And so it's just really great to be able to see it both on paper and in action. So thank you for that.
I have an opinion about what you just said. I would say that your plans are more comprehensive and sophisticated than a lot of other school districts from some of the ones that I've seen. So I think that's a good thing.
I've got just a couple real quick. You all came from another district. Did those districts use standard-based grading? All of them? Not your place?
Not at my level, the elementary they did.
Okay, all right. And secondly, I guess this progressive response to behavior plan, who was involved in the development of that? I mean, was it a combination of different disciplines throughout the district?
Yeah, so I can speak to that, but it really was a district level work. It was all of the associate principals as well as Mr. Tarnitzer and Lauren Rango. That pretty much comprised the team. They worked together, I think, before I was here last spring. They had kind of started to get together.
Yep.
Maybe it was even last winter, and then I know that they got together a handful of times over the summer to work on that plan, and then it rolled out kind of officially in the fall. We've kind of held it behind the scenes. We haven't necessarily shared it out publicly, mainly for a very calculated purpose of knowing that we were going to have to live it kind of in real life for a while, and put it into practice and kind of calibrate amongst the buildings and see what age appropriateness there was and make sure that it was serving the purpose we wanted it to. And I guess I speak for myself in saying that I think it's done a very good job of that so far for us this year.
Everybody satisfied to this point?
I would say we're learning. We're
Yeah.
learning through it, yeah.
I'm assuming
There's a lot
kind of
more
a fluid.
coherence, yeah.
Yeah?
Greg, could I jump
Bruce.
over that? Because that was the question I wanted to ask you guys. And I guess before I say, just compliment you, I want to compliment you, because I remember you talking about this last year. And so, has it been embraced by the staff, pretty much? I guess each of you?
I would say it's not, it's more the administration and the associate principals right now. The staff have had a little bit of exposure to it, but I think the part of it being embraced by the staff is that it helps to ensure equitable decision-making and a guide for both restorative practices and disciplinary actions. And so I think people are happy about that, because no matter how hard you try as an administrator, there are different biases and there are different things that happen with different experiences, and this project and this plan helps to keep people aligned and calibrated with one another.
Yeah, the word that comes to my mind, after teaching that many years, is the consistency, which, you're right, it's gonna take a while before it becomes kind of automatic. The other next question was, has it been embraced at all by the parents? Or are you hearing good things from them, pretty much? Or, again, it's all new, but I think it's a wonderful idea. So I'm just really excited about it, but.
Yeah, I think just to have that speaking point when you're talking to parents about why you made the decision that you made and what our kind of beliefs are and what our expectations are, and it gives that talking point that I think people really benefit from, not only parents, but staff members and students as well. So it's yeah.
And I can imagine as kids go through and they start at Conrad LVM primary school, and they just kind of follow it through. I just think it's I look at it the consistency, and I think it's a wonderful model to have. So anyway, thank you.
I would say one of the, from a teacher perspective, we were trying to minimize the changes at the start of a school year. But one of the things that has been emphasized at all the buildings is the importance of partnering with parents and calling home when you have concerns and doing so consistently. And so that has been a real focus. We haven't really shared the plan widely because pretty much almost daily, but at least every week, there are changes being made to it. We're encountering behaviors that aren't included on the plan, or we're wanting more flexibility in certain areas. So we wanted to kind of play with it a little bit before.
And I was thinking, well, you can't keep it that way forever. It just, you start putting things set in stone, you're gonna box yourself in the corners. But I just like the idea that we're trying to be consistent. I just compliment all of you.
Excellent. All right, moving on. All right, to family and community engagement. So our objective here is about bridging meaningful and constructive communication and partnerships to ensure equitable access, representation, and voice. So our key performance indicators here are really focusing on that parent-guardian satisfaction, which we did for the first time last year. So you see the baseline numbers for our informed index and our included index included there. We're also we're in the process of creating a community engagement self-assessment that looks at the number and the strengths of our partnerships with community partnerships. We spent a good chunk of last spring just recognizing the partnerships that we have, because that is something we often don't know. And as we kept talking, more and more partnerships kept coming up. So, are there different partnerships we could develop or strengthen? That's going to be the next focus with that plan. So that's kind of the overview of that element, but then we will start, this time we're going to start with Corey and work our way through, and then Greg gets to be last.
All right. So looking back at 22-23, we used to, at Wabisa, we used to do a monthly newsletter, and last year we shifted to a weekly, and we were doing both. So we were this was our opportunity. So we were doing a monthly newsletter, we were doing a weekly, and then we realized if we go over to 23-24, here's another example of us working together as a K-12 system. We are all now shifted to a weekly communication, SMORE, which hopefully by now you've seen that both maybe externally on the outside, and then we use it internally with our staff as well. So that's been a really nice tool to provide a consistent experience for families as they go throughout the system. Also looking back at last year, we took the spring data, the Studer Family Perception Survey data that was given, I believe, is in April. Our building leadership team analyzed that through spring, early summer, and continued to make some action plans with that, including we talked about Seesaw, so that's now being implemented. So we had a staff representative committee group go through some decision-making process last spring. The decision was made to go with Seesaw primarily because K2 had been using Seesaw since the start of the pandemic, I believe it was. And at that time, we were using Canvas, just wasn't age appropriate for our students. So to, again, think about the child and parental experience, K-12, there's really kind of like two shifts if we're thinking about learning management, Seesaw K-5 and Canvas 6-12. And this tool really allows to enhance the communication between student and teachers, home, actually students and their parents. Students can seesaw items that they're working on. It could be a writing piece, it could be an art piece, and teachers can say, seesaw that to their parents. So really kind of gives parents a more like in the moment glimpse of what's happening in the classroom. I will say though that we are in our first year, and you heard about us implementing some new literacy curriculum and so forth. So we are nudging our way forward with that and just kind of going step by step with that. And then lastly, our equity action team. We began to talk a little bit about the new student experience and what does that look like when they first come to us, when they enroll throughout the summer, but then also throughout the school year. So we're putting some processes in place, which we already started in August. So prior to the traditional welcome back supply drop-off event, we had all of our new families, we reached out, and we got about 85% of those new families come in for an in-person, talked a little bit about what does it mean to be a Wabisa Spartan, did a little tour, and then now we're taking that, extending that equity action team to developing a family night that we're looking to combine out of our EC through 8 PTO joining forces and developing a family night sometime second semester. So that is Wabisa.
All right, Indy Mound. So one big thing that we get a lot of feedback on in the middle school is communication, because in elementary school, families and parents seem to be pretty connected with their child's teacher because they have less of them. And so once students get to middle school, especially, 6th grade, right, when that transition happens, it sometimes feels like a little bit scary for parents because they don't have quite as much like understanding of what's happening. And so we're working on making sure that families feel supported, feel like they know what's happening in the classroom for their students. And so a couple things that we're doing for that is we are going to be offering some sessions for families on Infinite Campus, Canvas, and that's going to be in November. And then eventually, after we do a little bit more work on some things with standards-based grading, we'll have a session for standards-based grading as well. I'm thinking we're going to do it as a Google Meet so that families can just join from wherever and have a couple teachers and staff members and myself present to answer questions and kind of walk through how do you look up your child's grades on Infinite Campus? What do you do when it says missing work? Those kinds of things. Also, there is just this week, tomorrow night, I believe, our student services is doing kind of a parenting middle school kind of night, giving some tips and tricks about parenting middle schoolers and talking about different mental health concerns, some social media stuff. And then we're also planning in the spring a family fun night like Corey talked about. Again, the new platform for communication, all the principals have gotten together and, as you've heard, decided that we're all going to be using the Some More newsletter on Fridays, and so that has been great. At the PTO meetings, they have shared, just like you did, Megan, that they've noticed that we're hopefully sending less one-off communications home because we got lots of feedback on the survey from families about getting too many emails, and so we're really trying hard. So if families are listening, just know that's where you're going to find almost all of your information. So that's the thing to read. So I think sometimes, that's because people are used to us sending lots of reminders and lots of one-off emails that kind of we're switching that to try to have more streamlined communication. And also trying to put pictures and different things in there so people can see, kind of get inside the school by looking at the newsletter. And then finally, we are doing grade level hubs for family and school communication, and this is in the newsletter, but basically what it is related arts, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade each have a separate one, but parents and families and students and staff all can use it. You click on a link and it will say, like for my 8th grader, it will show all of his core academic classes, and then click on the other one, it's his related arts classes. It'll say, we're working on this in class today for ELA, science, whatever. We have assessments, the assessments on this day. And so you have pretty much everything that you need to know. You don't necessarily have all of the assignments themselves, but then it shows you how to click into Canvas to get to those assignments and things. So I want even more people to use it because it is a really, really, really cool tool for everybody to be able to use. And also it helps our case managers for our students with IEPs to communicate really well with the core teachers to help prepare the students with IEPs for things that are foreshadowing what's to come. All right.
All right. I'm going to hear a lot of the same from me, but the biggest focus at the high school level is also the creation of those s'mores, both internally for our staff and then obviously externally for students and families. And then kind of lastly, our new Spartan Spotlight video announcements have been, we've released those weekly on Mondays as well. And those have really started to gain some traction with some different student groups as well. I don't know if anyone here has seen them, but we're starting to get some more submissions from different student groups that are either celebrating some past accomplishment or recruiting members to something that's going on or just foreshadowing events that are coming up in the future to try to drum up some more student participation. So relying on those different ways to communicate both internally with students and staff and then externally with our families. And you can see some of the work from last year. They were really trying to identify some opportunities for families to get engaged in academic and career planning. And we do have that kind of academic and career planning night in the winter. I know they had a very big successful event last year with that. I don't remember if last year was the first year of that, but that will be something that will continue into this year and for years to come. There was a lot of great feedback from that evening.
All right, at CPS, one thing I'd like to highlight when it comes to family and community engagement at our school is that in as we reflected on the feedback we got from families, several things arose as themes. One of them being families wanting to just continue to stay informed of what their child is working on, learning in class with their teachers. And so that's something we continue to promote as much as we can with teachers, but also then when there are those opportunities, highlight them for families. So, I mean, formally, that's the parent-teacher conferences, that's the report cards, but what I'll speak to a little more is family involvement in general. Families want to be involved, and that means a lot of things. So we are actually working with our equity action team this year to define family involvement, and we're asking ourselves, why involve families? What is the purpose of it, so that we can go into a brainstorming session with that mindset. And our brainstorming is going to be around, rather than create something new to involve families, let's take the things we already do that are opportunities for family involvement and examine them with that lens. So there's a lot: field trips, classroom volunteers, so on and so forth, tutors even coming into the school, bringing things in, sending things home for families to work on. There's lots of opportunities, but again, we're gonna be intentional with re-examining the great things we already do with the eye for looking towards promoting increasing family involvement at the school level.
Excellent. So that is the presentations on family and community engagement. Questions, comments do we have from the board?
I'd just like to thank all of you, because I just know these newsletters must take a lot of time. And I think it's wonderful. I enjoy reading them myself, and I'm just going like, wow, on top of everything you do. It's wonderful. Jamie, you were mentioning, and I'm not going to get this right, but is there any way we can tell, and this isn't directed just to you, but to all of them, is there a way for us to kind of identify the people who are not able or not using this information? That, you know, the stuff that is out there, I remember as a teacher as well, but it's only gotten more exact what's out there for like assignments and whatnot. Is there a way to identify the parents who are just not using it and then trying to figure out why are they not? Are they too busy? Did they just not understand it? I'm not sure.
I mean, with the SMART platform, it gives you some analytics, which which is really helpful. Yeah. And I haven't dug super far into it, but I can tell you how many views it has. I can tell you like which link on your SMART newsletter is used the most and how many clicks it's had. So we can see more, usage than, which obviously if you look at it the other way, lack of usage. But I feel like one of the questions in the family survey is about access, I believe, Aaron, to internet and devices, and so many and most of our families have that access. So it's just a matter of continuing to get the word out there for people and knowing. That's why we're trying to have this family session to try and show families, right there, show them what it looks like, and maybe that will help as well. So I think, and just continuing to talk with parents about it when people call, or when we're having parent-teacher conferences, or when anything, we just continue to talk, and once you show them what the resources are, I think that's when they become used more often.
I was just going to add too that that's part of the reason we moved to the s'mores was the user experience. Some of the things that we had been sending out, Google Doc, they were really hard. Most of our parents, they told they're viewing things on their phone. So when you're trying to scroll on a Google Doc, it's very hard to read. But with the s'more, not perfect, but it's a lot easier to read. So,
Jimmy, you answered one of the questions I was thinking of. Parents telling the school that we're communicating with them too much. And you talk about email, so you switch that mode. Is that an issue in the district? Because I know there's a lot of information going out. And I know parents are busy.
It was, and I think that was kind of part of the decision to go to that s'more, is that if everyone can kind of streamline theirs at that building level, especially for families that have students at multiple buildings, if they're getting multiple emails a day from each building, it's just becoming overload, and they do a delete all instead of taking time to read that, and understandably so. I mean, I think that was part of the decision to really try to streamline that across all buildings.
I would say, part of and we're still early in our adoption of SMORE, but part of the training was about how to communicate messages using more visuals, fewer words. The idea is to make it mobile friendly, in that most people are gonna just scroll through and see what they wanna see. And that they're more likely to do that than they are to read an email. But I'm looking at, I just pulled up some of the data. So when you look at the family ones, 400, 500 views for a weekly newsletter. That's pretty good. And I can't imagine that was that way with our monthly, to be honest. So people are using them and certainly referencing them. And of course, the staff ones are in the hundreds, which you would hope, for views as well. So I think that the format is also part of it. And it's not just having it in one place, but also having a format that's mobile friendly.
I just think, you're to be commended for recognizing how important this is to families and community members, to be kept in the loop. So I can only imagine it gets to be somewhat frustrating when you start to get a messaging from the opposite way saying, whoa, this is just, it's overwhelming. And I think we've always kind of been of the thought that you can't communicate too much, but I guess maybe you can. So, you just have to make sure that you're not creating fatigue, and maybe they stop. If there's too much, they stop. So I commend you for going to a system that's going to help fix that problem.
I mean, speaking as a parent who definitely was one of the ones that probably said I got too many emails, because I have kids in multiple schools, it was a lot, and I think this format is great, and it's easy to read, and I can read what I want and skip what I don't want to read. I would encourage you, because I'm a skimmer with my emails for the most part, and you've probably said this in emails before, but encouraging families to utilize Infinite Campus or Seesaw or Canvas. I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I didn't actually get access to Infinite Campus until this year, and I have a senior and a sophomore and an 8th grader. That's ridiculous, I know that. But the thing that made me do it was that I could do my attendance on that. So the little things where it's just so much easier than having to call the school to, excuse my child, or there's just so many things that I think parents don't realize they have access to in addition to grades and missing assignments. Sell that, because for some parents, I just made my husband look at the grades. I didn't want to deal with it until I found out that I didn't have to sit on the phone and call, to excuse a student. So I know those seem silly, but I think that's the thing sometimes parents don't understand.
Great, thank you.
Anybody have anything else?
I have a question. Can you make accommodations for parents who do not want to come to school, for a parent conference, for a parent training of some kind?
Yeah, we offer a lot of them, and anybody can do a Zoom, and if a family wanted to, we would go to them. We would go wherever they needed us to go, but always, or I guess it's not Zoom anymore, it's Google Meet.
Yeah, virtual. We offer that as part of the conference experience now. That was one of the things we learned out of the pandemic. I don't think we did a really good, I don't think we did a really good job of that beforehand. I don't even know if it was an option, to be honest with you.
I don't think it was.
Now it's kind of like, hey.
Yeah, IEP meetings.
But surprisingly, we're still finishing collecting our data, but it's overwhelming, at least at our level, that parents want face-to-face, the elementary, yeah. I mean, there was a small handful, just about scheduling, but, if that means that we got a conference, then great, yeah.
Anything else? If not.
Yeah, I'll just reiterate what I said before. I think this is the part of the strategic plan that feels the most visible as a parent and multiple kids in the district. And I think that this has been a huge turnaround in such a short amount of time. And even just the mental space that it frees up for parents and families to be able to engage in those other events. Like Greg, you were talking about, like now they're going to have one place to look at to go see the events that have always been going on, but now they have more space to be actually, to engage in that. So I think it is amazing what you all have done with this plan and what you've implemented, and then what you also have planned in the future. And I also appreciate that what it feels like as a parent is that the people at the schools are more accessible. Like it's easier to figure out who to reach out to when you have a question. It feels a lot more accessible, and the piece of it, I know that it's in the high school newsletter. I don't know if it's in every newsletter, but I suspect that it is. Having that information about the school board meetings, I think is also really important. That's going to help our families and community really engage in the ways that that maybe they weren't able to before because they couldn't find the information. So overall, this communication plan with the district has really, really, I think, helped to increase people's ability to engage with us and to just have a better school experience. And so and it has happened in such a short amount of time. So it's amazing. Thank you.
All right, moving on to exceptional staff. Of course, we have that, but our objectives here are to provide an inclusive work environment that fosters open communication, collaboration, growth, and support to promote high levels of well-being. And there's another objective, it's a twofer here, actively recruit and retain a diverse staff representative of a global society. So a couple of things we're looking at with our key performance indicators, of course. Now we're looking at our staff check-in survey, which we have the baseline data from our first go-around last year, and we'll do annually. The first thing is the engagement index. So I like working here, I'm valued, I heard, I can contribute. Also the staff experience index, which is about feeling accepted, respected, and supported at school. And then also looking at our staff retention rate. That is something that, I think we have talked about a lot, but we haven't really looked at a number. So now we're starting to maintain that 94.5% last year. Certainly that's wonderful. We want to keep that up there in a high number. So now we're going to turn over to Jamie in the middle school to get us started.
All right. Just to note, I know we've talked about this a lot, but the people you see in front of you, we've been meeting a lot and talking a lot and trying to really use the survey results and just each other's experiences to provide a kind of systematic, aligned approach. And so hopefully you're hearing that and seeing that through all. We're trying to get together as a principal team outside of our A-Council meetings, outside of other meetings that we have, so that we can have that time to do that. So that's something that's really important, and you're going to, obviously, are hearing it throughout the time tonight. So for exceptional staff, I think we are continuing, and I know Brett talked about this a little bit up in educational excellence. Some of these categories overlap just a little bit, but we're really working on continuing to grow our distributed leadership among our staff. When you develop leaders, they want to stay, they feel valued, and so actually the first and the third bullet point, really, we're having our building leadership team and others beyond doing more professional development facilitation, the experts in their area, whether it be literacy or equity, or we're doing a deep dive in our standards-based grading practices at Indian Mound and kind of, making sure that everybody is on the same page, because it has been, a rollout year by year by year, and now everybody is there, and so we're trying to align each other with that. The disciplinary literacy, the CLR, all of that. So example, on Friday this week at Indian Mound, we're kind of taking all of those things and creating one experience for our staff that includes all of those. So it doesn't feel like it is okay, over here is the binder study, over here is standards-based grading. We're working to model that professional development with the teachers who are in the classrooms doing that work. And in our professional development, it isn't just adults up there talking at other adults. It's really modeling what they do in the classroom for their students. And so we're using protocols, we're using critical reading strategies with our staff so that they can then use it in the classroom. So that's something that we've been working a lot on at Indian Mound. And just another thing to touch on is our staff, we're really proud of our staff acknowledgement systems. And I will say, I inherited an amazing staff. The middle school staff is some of the happiest staff that I've ever seen. I really think it's incredible. There's a lot of amazing things happening. People have each other's back. They support each other. There's hard times too, but one thing we are really working on is our acknowledgement systems, and really trying to acknowledge staff the way they want to be acknowledged, because it isn't the same for everybody. So we do a VIP every week, and we're now putting that in the newsletter, as hopefully you've seen. And then we have this sign that goes across their door that students made, and we're announcing it to students as well. We're doing positive postcards for students, but also for staff. So when we see each other doing things that are exciting, or if we see somebody who's having a difficult time, we recently have had some people whose family members have passed away, and we're providing just that little extra touch for people to be like, I see you, I see that you're working hard, I know you're going through something, or even if it's just a really rough day. So that's something that's been really important to us, and then that also pairs with the culture of warmth that's been happening at the district level. I think that's it for exceptional staff from us.
Great. At the high school level, I'm going to really ditto what Jamie said about the shared leadership opportunities. Literally everything that she touched on is a big focus at the high school level as well, with being able to get some of our staff to really buy into leading different professional development opportunities, whether it's just Tier 1 general best practices for all classrooms, or CLR, or literacy, or anything really. Really leaning into that with a lot of our different staff members. And then the other one, my other bullet point here, is the intentional staff community building opportunities. That was developed off of feedback from the staff survey last year. At the high school level, we feel like it's pretty easy to get just sucked into your own department and feel like that's your own little community, and that you never go talk to the world languages department if you're on the first floor in the social studies department, or whatever it might be. So we've really been trying to look at some different opportunities to be able to get people out of those departments and interacting with others throughout the building. We do have a fairly large staff here, so really trying to figure out how to make that feel like a little bit more of a community. So we've done a few things at the beginning of the year, have some things planned throughout the course of the remainder of the year as well, to hopefully offer some opportunity for that. So it's been well received so far, so looking forward to continuing that out throughout the rest of the year.
At CPS, when I think of exceptional staff, in the same vein that you've already heard, it really does start with staff culture. And I love how Aaron kicked off the beginning of the year for everybody with that culture of warmth piece. And again, thinking about culture specific to CEPS, several years ago, 8-10 years ago, we just went through quite a few growing pains as a staff. We were in 2 buildings. We went through 5 principals in 6 years. We moved into 1 building. And through all of that, our culture improved each year because we examined it and we set goals around it, and people were committed to improving that culture, to the extent where when our BLT looked at our climate and culture survey data this summer, they were blown away. We have some of the best scores climate and culture-wise that we've ever seen. And really, that's a kudos to the staff at CPS. They wanted to improve, and they did improve, and it's all because of their work. You've heard me talk about letters and wonders. That's a lot, and with it being a lot, we don't have a lot of time to intentionally work on a climate and culture this year. So instead, we need to think creatively. We need to keep in the back of our minds as staff that we as individuals, as teams, will look for opportunities where we can where we can maintain and continue to improve our solid climate and culture. One thing we did decide to do, though, that will help with that, in addition to staff culture, but also student culture even, is we decided to adopt what we're calling monthly themes this year. It's nothing groundbreaking, it's pretty simple, but basically each month has a theme. And along with that theme, there's gonna be resources shared with staff. There will be student lessons for some of the themes when it makes sense, but also, kind of more importantly, I'll even say, we're gonna embed moments of student joy that connect with the theme and moments of staff joy that connect with the theme of each month as well. So, for example, October was identity. This month is safety and self-control. So depending on the time of the year, the theme matches that, and it also fits in with our PBIS system too. It gives us a way to intentionally think about, again, the staff joy piece when I'm thinking about the exceptional staff, just doing our part to keep it going, because this is the year we're not gonna be as intentional as we have been in building that strong climate and culture, but I think I can speak for everybody at CPS, we're also not gonna let it go either.
All right. At WBSA, we too examined that data, our staff survey data, and really what motivates, we talk a lot about increasing student voice, you've heard that, but of course staff having a sense of voice and what's happening. So they really kind of drove our goals here. First one being authentic staff and student celebrations. So we took our building leadership team to the PLC conference this past summer. And out of that process, there was some intentional examination at how we're celebrating staff and students. So just for example, some adding on to some layers that we've already done, but we have Together is Better, just handwritten notes. You'd be surprised at how much staff appreciate those, and it seems like every time one of those goes into a mailbox or so forth, you walk into somebody's room, they got them posted up, right? Other things like finding out what's someone's favorite song and playing that at the start of a staff meeting, and it builds connection and identity. Similarly to what Greg had talked about for students, we kind of redid the way that we're recognizing students. We're having character focus kind of themes each month, and like we just celebrated student wellness this past month. Teachers are acknowledging the students, they get an award, they get their picture taken, those are posted up in the hallway. Students are seeing themselves and really celebrating the great work that they're doing. Next one, talked a little bit about this earlier with the behavior plan that we are implementing, but this was really a priority that our building leadership was wanting to have those cross grade level discussions, so not just within grade levels, but across the grade levels. We talked about that calibration earlier across schools, but all the buildings, which has been helpful, but our teachers have said they want to be able to do that because it's super important. That us among teams and through it as a school building, that we're trying to, as best as possible, acknowledge student behavior and responding to it in an appropriate manner that's consistent. And then lastly, you've heard this from several buildings, the shared leadership, which has been just amazing, the amount of efficacy and response from our staff when their colleagues are leading, whether it's our equity work with our CBTs that we're doing with our CLR work, through building leadership team, through our committee work. Staff are really stepping up and engaging in leadership action. So excited about all of that.
Excellent, so that's the presentation in that pillar. What questions and comments do we have from the board?
I have a comment. First of all, I have a couple things. I just kudos to all of you. I mean, I've been going around seeing schools, and I'll be honest with you, I think your staff in each one of those buildings are, they're reflecting what you're talking about. I'm just really impressed. I feel like the climate of the staff, I mean, it's really good. And that makes me really very proud. Jamie, you were mentioning about, what is it, how do you call it? You call it the calibration and alignment. And I think it's really, and it kind of is this whole thing again, we're kind of making it more uniform throughout the whole system. But, when I first started here, we were a 712 building. So obviously there was a great deal of, uniformity between what was going on in 7th grade and 8th grade. Now you got kids who are taking 8th grade, it can be language, it could be math, and they're getting high school credit. And the fact that you guys are doing it, because I think for a long time, we were kind of into this, a little bit of this silo type thing attitude. And I really like the idea that we're starting to reach out. I think that's so important, because it has to be, again, that consistency throughout. So anyway, just thank you all, because I think you got very happy staff working in 4 different buildings.
Corey, you mentioned about cross-grade level communication with behavior, for example. Do you do cross-building collaboration, where a 2nd grade team meets with a 3rd grade team, 5th grade with a 6th grade team?
We haven't yet, but I know that has been conversations that have come up over the years, where our staff have wanted to have cross-grade level conversations with CPS. We did that maybe, I think it was my first year, but that's definitely something we could consider, yeah, for sure.
Because I think it's important. One thing, when I was working here, one thing that I disliked hearing from, like, say, a 2nd grade teacher, where the parents talking about 3rd grade, a 2nd grade teacher say, I have no idea what they do over there. It's a killer. But we can minimize that if we do a little more cross-building communication.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else?
No, again, I just want to compliment all your staff. Yeah, I think we have exceptional staff, 4K through 12.
Take it away.
All right, moving on to our last pillar, last but not least, the resource allocation. So our objectives here are to create a fiscally and environmentally responsible operational plan that is equitable, sustainable, and adaptable to evolving needs and priorities. And also to deepen our investment in district diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts through community partnerships and district actions. In terms of our key performance indicators, we've talked about this at length and really felt like where we're going to see indicators of improvement in this pillar is by seeing them in the other 3. Essentially, we're allocating resources to support the other 3 elements. So more than a number associated with it, it's really about looking at the progress in those other indicators and, what are some of the actions that we've taken with our resources to allocate them. So, for example, the creation of 5 student services positions and a DEIB coordinator last year is a clear indication of how we're choosing to allocate our resources to support those other pillars. So this time, last but not least, we're going to start with Brett.
Great. So you can see some updates on progress from the 22-23 school year. And I know Aaron just touched on adding some new staff members for this coming school year. So kind of talking about the, money resource. One of the things at the high school specifically that we attributed some funds to is some new atrium furniture on the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd floor. We have atriums that are kind of common learning spaces for all students, and we have some new flexible seating options in those areas. We used to have essentially lunch tables in those areas, so we allocated some funds to get some more functional seating in those areas. Action steps planned for this year. It got a little creative here by saying that we're using the strategic use of time as a resource to focus on our school culture. So one of the things that we're really working on, and our first one is coming up here in a couple of weeks, is a Spartan Pride Assembly. We're going to have 3 of those on predetermined dates throughout the school year. So November 21st is our first one, and we will be using that as a way to celebrate accomplishments of students or accomplishments of staff, or as well of just different groups or clubs or individual students. So by predetermining those dates, we make sure that we have them spaced out throughout the year and can really highlight some of the neat things we've got going on in the building. And then Aaron already kind of touched on our staffing additions and alterations by adding a school psych, a school counselor, DEIB coordinator, and a math interventionist. All 4 of those positions are new at the high school this year. So figuring out where those fit in and how to use them appropriately within our building to be able to really maximize the amount of effect they're able to have for our students and for our staff that they work with has been a fun thing to really work through at the start of this year.
All right, at CEPS, resource allocation. So picture having a full-time job, and then on top of that, going through one of the most intense trainings for your job you can. That's letters for our teaching staff. And then learning a new way to do one of the largest portions of your day. That's wonders for English language arts for our teaching staff. And then also with our vision, focusing on equity and inclusion. That's a big commitment as well, and that's our CLR work for our teaching staff. You would not walk into CPS and ask anybody if this is the right work and get the answer no. It is the right work, working on early literacy, working on equity and diversity. At CPS this year, it is a lot for our staff. So I'm thinking of resource allocation as time right now. This year, we are focusing on letters training, wonders learning, wonders planning, and our CLR work. And as the big rocks, that's it. I've committed to staff that we're going to avoid as much as we can adding in any surprise asks of teachers throughout the year. We are not going to be, providing one-off staff meetings or PD where, hey, here's a really fun topic we're going to learn about today, because sometimes even having to mentally just know more things and think like, should I be using this? Teachers have guilt that they put on themselves. That's a real thing. So we are committed again to our rocks for the year, but we're not adding in anything else. And that being said, we are also providing time that we don't in a typical year because we are asking so much of our CPS teaching staff. So we've canceled some things like committee meetings, some staff meetings, so that we can provide the additional work time needed for our staff. They've got to do reading, online modules, live trainings for Zoom. They've got to read their new Wonders manuals and collaborate with each other. And so we're also, in addition to committing to those, we're also committing to giving time when we can as well. And that's really our focus when it comes to resource allocation this year.
So, at Wabisa, our three main priorities that we're listing here around resource allocation, thinking at sort of a time, but also financially as well, is really making sure that we're using some good decision-making around how we're supporting the learning and the ongoing support of both literacy and our CLR throughout the year. And then moving into the second one, the time, 20-minute DEAR time. You may have heard of that term before. It's drop everything and read. So every week on Thursday, while our classroom teachers are doing their PLC time, we have other staff who support the classrooms. And so it's really, yes, a focus back to the educational excellence. It's also an equity decision too, because it guarantees that every student gets that additional 20 minutes of reading time every single day. So students have gotten a lot better at even the day before, Wednesday afternoon, teachers saying, hey, remember you're gonna have your DEAR time in the morning, get your book ready, because kids can be pretty sly at wandering around the room and make it look like they're looking for a book for 10 minutes. So it's really coming along nicely and giving us a good focus of making sure that all students, and that's every student, no student gets pulled for any other services during that time. And then the last one is, you may have noticed if you've been to Wabisa lately, we have these large televisions. No, we're not showing movies during lunchtime. The intention, and it actually really came out of our equity action team, to increase that sense of belonging and identity. We kind of toyed around with some idea of getting pictures around, but then the cost of getting printed and so forth. So we can do, there are some announcement type things like lunch and so forth, and birthdays on there as well. But it's like things that are just happening, authentic things that are happening during the school day. Playground, field trips, in the classroom, and we can just send that quickly to the person who's sort of operating that. And we'll sit down at the lunchroom table and say, hey, you want to take a selfie? And yep, it'll be on the screen. It's up on the screen the next day. So really, it's changed our lunchtime experience too, because sitting down with 170 kids, you've been in there, right? You can get a little bit, antsy and a little bit loud at times. So kids are really excited. We also use it to do our acknowledgments that you see in our newsletter. So it's Native American Heritage Month. There's some learning that happens in that way too. So
All right, Indian Mound, resource allocation. So, everybody already spoke about some of the new hires that we had, and so that's also something that's been great at Indian Mound for our school social worker. I talked a little bit about this before, but spent a decent amount of resources on contributing to summer work between the building, my building budget and Melissa's budget from the teaching and learning department to really dig into the work around standards-based grading and alignment. And we are continuing with that work and spending a decent amount of time during our PD to ensure that we are, all aligned and connected on that work. We are also looking at our budget and looking at how we're spending our money and making sure that it's connected to our strategic plan so that we know that we are putting our funds and resources towards the things that we're committed to as a school and as a district. And we also are working to look at the building budget to see how we can ensure to keep our fees low for students. It's really important to us that we keep our fees as low as possible because we want the learning experiences just to be learning experiences for our students without having to pay extra. So that's something we're going to continue to work on and really try and be creative with as everything is continuing to be more expensive. And then another thing with the resource allocation and kind of partnerships, it's kind of both, but we have a continued partnership with UW for our SABRS. It's 2nd through 12th grade, but SABRS is kind of an assessment that students take as a social emotional assessment, and student services then have access to it. But at our school, we're doing a partnership where staff are also scoring students twice a year on the SABRS, and so we can compare what the students score themselves to what the staff is scoring students to. So teachers are taking time and we're connecting with UW, and the teachers are getting a very small amount of money to do it from the UW, and the UW is then helping pay for our FastBridge, part of it at least. No, not FastBridge. Yeah, FastBridge, Melissa? Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're paying. I'm like it's been a kind of a process to get it paid for, but they're paying for our membership or our license to FastBridge for 1 year while we're doing this partnership. So, and then also our student services along with that SABRS, and we're taking that information to. There were a group of teachers who did a TSG around anxiety. And so something really cool that we're doing is it started out as every week, but I think we're going to do it every other week that we have a full week of school, is we're sending a survey out to students that ask them how their weekend was and if there's anything they want to share with us about their weekend. And it's been really interesting. And so if there's anything that students want to share with us, that we feel like we need to follow up with them on, then we're able to do that. But that kind of goes along with the SABRS. Between that and the SABRS, I feel like we'll be able to spend that time and resources in partnership with mental health.
Excellent. Questions, comments from the board?
I was going to make a comment the last time, and the way it goes with this resource allocation. As a former teacher, reach out to the former staff. I just think what you did, Greg, with your tree, that is so awesome. And I know you brought in some people, and they were so proud of it. And it just connects them to the current staff and the kids, and they reach out. It kind of broadens, I think, everyone's appreciation for this community. That's one thing I'd love to see. And I don't know if this is appropriate, but I'm gonna say it anyway, so here we go. I keep on saying, some point I would like to see a high school class where kids who might be interested in going to education would take a class, and then they would be this cadre of people who could go around to the various schools, see classes, but also then become people who could also be helping. Kind of like your 8th grade, Jamie, working with the 6th graders. You have a high school kid coming in there, and I know they're doing things like that already with like reading and stuff like that. And that is such an eye-opener for these little kids. And same, at the Wabeesa Intermediate School. But someday, I dream that that will be something that we'll do, because I just think it offers so much. And then the last one would be, it's related again, Greg, to what you have, the idea of a museum. I think every school has famous people and various fields, and we need to recognize them. And we need to kind of, they can from sports to music to business to politics. We've had some amazing people in this community. And I don't know if that has to do with resource allocation, but I want to include that.
Well said.
I would say this in response to what you were saying, Bruce. Sometimes, because I'm a retired staff member here, out of sight, out of mind, we have a rich resource of retired staff here. We only have to reach out to them. And when I get together with my group every month, I mean, some of them really feel bad. It's like they had never been employed here because they were never asked to come back for anything. So when we talk about resources, that's an untapped resource. And again, the longer they're out, the more difficult, unless they are to return. But I can name some staff that retired last year. They want to take a year off, but then they want to come back in some type of volunteer capacity. We just have to ask them and set up the situation that's right for them. So, let's see, secondly, I forget what you were talking about, Bruce. Oh, we have a young lady that the Optimists are recognizing tomorrow, and she was in Maria Barking's class last semester, helping Maria with her kindergarten classroom part-time. This year, I think she's the first one in the Youth Apprenticeship Program who's in a third grade classroom as sort of an educational assistant. So that gets to what you're talking about, Bruce, but I think we can do even much more than what we're doing right now. So, well, it's sort of like a club for future educators.
And we
Nice
have
goal.
talked about, kind of a grow your own model and doing that. And there's some
Yep.
models out there that are gaining popularity around the state and the nation.
Yep.
It hasn't been, on the top of our priority list, but it's on a list. It's on a list.
I do believe that the formalized youth apprenticeship program continues to add pathways, and the education pathway is one that they are, so it doesn't have to be this kind of fly by the seat of your pants, this person's interested, let's put them in a TA position and figure it out. I think there will be a formalized, the true youth apprenticeship program is looking to go that route.
Anybody got anything else? If not, I just want to commend you on the work that you're doing. I think we all understand how difficult it is and how complex it is. But I think even more to the core of what I'm seeing this year in my conversations across the district in all the different buildings. And Melissa and I had a conversation about this just before the meeting. Across the board, there is something about this district that's different this year than even last year or the year before in terms of staff morale and just the general overall feeling of how the year is going so far. And it's just incredibly encouraging. And that's due in no small part, to you folks, and obviously we know you all have teams, but if you would take at least my commendation back to the people that are responsible for how great it feels to be around here again this year.
Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, you bet.
And I think that's partially due to the staff surveys that have gone out the past couple of years and the response by administration and the board. Make sure that just doesn't get put on the shelf, that we want to turn that into some type of action so we can get to the culture and the environment that we're experiencing.
Well done.
Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on. We will go to Mr. Mooney, CISA 2, Board of Control update.
Yes, I can give that to you. The Board of Control used to meet every month. up until this year. Then the members decided, let's just meet every other month. And we meet in Whitewater at the CISA building, so we're meeting every other month, and this is my last meeting just a week ago. Ted Knoll, the special education, I have to write down my time so you don't go over. But you go over and just let me know. Ted Knoll, the special education director of the Regional Services Network, presented just some basic information. 74 school districts are in CISA 2, and anyone can reach out to support to the RSN. Resources available include their professional development programs, IDEA, compliance, best practices, assessment, technical assistance, staffing, data collection, analysis, onboarding of new staff, just to name a few. Some new information that I didn't realize is that there are 450 compliant points required in each IEP. Imagine how many IEPs that are written in this district, and 450 compliant points. Also, what's available is a 150-page guide to IEP forms, and it's a result of Chapter 115, which we may be aware of. 150-page guide to IEP forms. If you're a new staff member, or you've moved into the special ed realm out from regular ed, where do you start with all this? And that's where administration comes in. Yeah, they help serve as checkpoints with that. And since learning more in-depth information about that, I have a renewed appreciation for what our special ed staff is required to do and what they do. CISA 2 is starting a pilot program. It's the new teacher induction program, probably similar to what we experience. CISA 2 is directly involved with some of the Head Start programs in CISA 2. And they provide comprehensive mental health programs for 3 to 4-year-olds. 98% of the referrals to public schools meet qualification criteria to receive services from public schools, which tells me that prior to any referral of a student, a 3 or 4-year-old, to a public school, the preschool teachers have done their job. In everything they've done, they've exhausted all the resources that they have, their expertise, and to have that type of response rate, 98%. Head Start teachers recently received a 25% pay increase, resulting in greater retention of more teachers. And there's an increase in pay for support staff in Head Start that will be addressed shortly. So that pay is really a big deal, and it should be. So I'm glad that we're CISA at least starting to address that. Scott Carr, he is the Career and College Readiness Consultant for CISA 2. There's 8 focus areas that he talked about: academic and career planning, redefining what readiness means, student outcomes, and they've created a portrait of a graduate, the readiness approach leading to achievement, the work career-based learning, the Wisconsin career pathways, equity and access, graduation pathways, and readiness leadership. So as you can tell, CISA 2 is very involved with the districts, and they have a lot to offer us. In the second report, it's the WEVA report. Again, we meet monthly. It's all by Zoom, once a month. This is just some of the information that was shared. Enrollment is fluctuating, but trending in a positive manner. And there always seems to be a dip in the fall, but then by second semester, they probably have underestimated what their enrollment will be. Disenrollment needs improvement, particularly in the Insight program. That's what the data shows. The board approved to switch banks from Lake Ridge and Monona to one community bank in McFarland. $70,000 was approved by the board for a tutoring contract for K-12 students with WEVA. The board approved 7 policies, including the audio taping of IEP meetings. I don't think they've done that in the past. I'm not sure if we do it here. We don't do it here. And the reason why they do that is to make sure that if there's any misinterpretations of what's said, that they have a recording of it. Joan Gast, she's in their office, was recognized for her 10-year anniversary of service at WEVA. Each principal report out sharing for each of the 5 schools there. 100% of the students were contacted by a school staff member prior, and at the start of the 23-24 school year. That's quite remarkable, because they have 2,000 some kids right now, close to 3,000. Actually closer to 3,500, I think. 98% of the students logged in on the third Friday count, which is really good. I'm not sure what our percentage is when they have to be in the seat here. 20 students are enrolled in the DCA Connect program in Green Bay. I talked about that last spring. With expectation, there will be 100 students enrolled at the beginning of the second semester. So when I talk about they only have 20 this fall, that's what they anticipated. And that program will certainly grow. And there's our next meeting, our December meeting will be up in Green Bay at the DCA Connect facility. 15 sites conducted in-person family picnics after school started, plus 1 virtual picnic. And then, again, as mentioned last time, we've will maintain data on interventions for re-engagement of students. So we have an idea of what they've tried to keep those students engaged at WEVA. So they don't have to come before us like tonight. Several students will be sent back to their home district. Okay, that's that.
Stride Fall Summit?
Yes. Let's see, where I do have that. You know, I don't have that with me right now.
Okay.
So if I can hold that off till next time?
Table that till the next meeting?
Yep.
We'll move along to the district administrator's report. Mr. Tarnitzer, the floor is yours.
Thank you. It is a pleasure to share with you this evening. I want to do some, start off with some recognitions, of course. Something that is important for us to recognize is we hosted, look at me. I'm going to turn off my camera. We hosted the, I don't know. I switch it up. You never want people to think that you're in one place.
Cracks me up every time.
I know. Sorry. One of these days I might get myself in some trouble. So I want to recognize the work that went in the wonderful execution. We hosted the Badger Small Conference Swim Meet here in our pool. What a great event, a way to showcase our facilities. So a special thanks to Stu Schaefer and Kayla and Jessica, who did just a great job. I heard wonderful things about it. And, of course, we acknowledge many of our athletic accomplishments, and so much goes into the success of these student athletes. So appreciate all the coaches as our seasons are starting to wind up here. Also wanted to recognize the amount of effort that goes in to take 4 busloads of students to Green Bay. That is quite an undertaking. It's interesting, I think, when we started this with girls' basketball last year, and we actually had 4 middle school buses and I think 2 buses from the high school. We started this new trend, which seems to be having our middle schoolers go, and they did a phenomenal job on Friday, just did a great job. And so it's just it's a lot of community pride and our many other athletic accomplishments and recognitions as well. A special shout out to Carrie Roberts, who organizes our staff flu and COVID vaccination clinics. The numbers are in. We had 190 staff receive the flu shot and 161 staff received the COVID vaccination. So that is a very large group, and how convenient is it to just walk down the hall and end up with a couple of shots. Some of us had a bit of struggle the next day, but we did okay. We scheduled it well. It was a professional development day the next day, so thank you, Carrie. Wanted to acknowledge, I know Jamie mentioned this, but I just think it's really unique. They're calling it Minding the Middle. The middle school student services staff, having a parent tip event for families. I just think that's very innovative and very creative, and they're extremely busy. But I think it's a good example of when we actually start getting closer to being right-sized with our student services staff, they're able to do some more of those type of things that are more preventative and community engagement focused. So that's great. I'm going to share some photos, which will include some recognitions with you as well. All right, so we have here, I really just think this is great. Making musical instruments in STEAM, right? And I can imagine this seemed like a great creative project for our students, and then they went home and found whatever they could in their house and made musical instruments at home, which I always, think is really fun, but a very creative idea, making musical instruments there at CEPS. Yes, we had a superhero assembly, and these were your 3 superheroes. I haven't seen these 3 since. Actually, pretty disguised well.
Who's that in the middle?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. Yeah, you never know. That can't be revealed. But 2 of the 3 should be very present in your thinking. Yes, so that was that. Some are happy, some are angry, some are very serious. So, Wabisa had some fun at the assembly doing the chicken dance. So, thought that was really clever, and that gets to that community building that Corey referenced a little bit earlier. The author share event, the past 2 years I've been invited and couldn't attend, but the literacy classes share their writing and invite other people to attend, and I've heard wonderful things about that. But that is one of the important things, is to share your writing as authors. And so, exciting event there. I thought this was just really clever, getting your Boeing license. So as a 5th grader, getting sort of that, passing the test and getting a certificate. So Leanna Hershey, as you know, is always very creative and motivating for the students to get their license there. Bookmark and cover art, the smiles tell it all, right? Making those bookmarks, it's really, really clever. Reading the book, The Tiger Rising, and then doing some soap whittling. When I saw this, wanted to make sure they were using plastic knives. It does appear no one was injured in the making of these, but just a fun idea, and again, the smiles tell it all. The 8th grade had a virtual visit with a really well-known young adult author, Kwame Alexander. Crossover, I think, is probably his most famous book, a very well-read book. And so they had all of the 8th graders in these 3 separate locations were engaging in this nationwide virtual event. So very interesting. Learned about the writing process, and I found it to be fascinating. We've mentioned Timberlee before, but I think it's just nice to see them still smiling on day 2, doing well. Just a great group. They always do this group picture that I never seem to be a part of. But it's really neat just to see the energy in the groups over the years. Just an amazing event once again. Our 7th and 8th graders doing some food labs, culinary labs. There in the wonderful facility. If you haven't had a chance to see. It's been a couple years now that it's been kind of reconfigured in there. So if you're ever at the middle school, pop in there and check it out. Of course, we have a new family consumer sciences teacher who's doing an amazing job, Julie Tokheim. They're lucky to have her. Hope Squad making kindness rocks. Hope Squad is really an amazing thing here at the high school. Remember last year Governor Evers came in and met with Hope Squad. A powerful group talking about youth mental health and suicide. This weekend coming up, we got Legally Blonde, so I'm sure you've got your tickets. If not, please do so. Get your tickets. And this week is National School Psychologist Week, and once there were 3, now there are 4. So a new member there with Andrea Quella, but such amazing leaders. I think it's hard to convey to the public and to the board the difference that they make, especially behind the scenes with staff. Very intelligent, bright, hardworking, student-centered people. We're just so fortunate to have them.
Not only student-centered, but also teacher-centered,
Yes,
because teachers rely on them also.
they do a lot of
Consultation.
consultation and things. So that concludes that part. And in terms of coming up, we also have some other, events coming up. The end of the quarter's coming up. We have staff development. We also have the Veterans Day. Different buildings do different celebrations. Of course, it's on Saturday, but they do different celebrations, both at the end of this week and early next week. Coming up, we have Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week, Diwali, World Kindness Day, American Education Week's coming up. We have the School and Village Board Joint Planning Committee. It's been a while since we've met. We're meeting, that time was changed to 4:30, by the way. And that's on the 14th. Educational Support Professionals Day coming up on the 15th. National Parent Involvement Day coming up every day, but also on November 16th. Substitute Educators Day coming up on the 17th. And then we get to see each other again on the 20th, and followed by fall break. And then we have a work session on the 30th, so we get to spend extra time together this month. So that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. In terms of action items, the first is action on McFarland High School Spring Early College Credit and Start College Now program requests. 20 students have applied to take college-level courses under the Early College Credit and/or Start College Now programs at Madison College and UW-Madison. Last year, it was 27 students. A list of all the students and the courses that are requested are included in your packet. You will notice our recommendation is that some of these requests are not approved. This is due to the fact that the same course will be offered at McFarland High School next year through Fuel Ed, or they have prerequisite courses to take first. If you are in agreement with these recommendations, the following motion is in order. So I would look for that motion.
Yes, I'll move to approve the course approvals and denials for the Early College Credit and Start College Now program requests as recommended by the MHS administration.
Thank you, Tom. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Kate?
Oh.
I
What
don't know.
happened?
What did you say?
I don't know. Did something happen?
You both kind of spoke at the same time, so we're trying to decide if it was you, Megan, or Kate
Oh,
that did the second.
Kate.
All right.
okay. Yeah, that's the way we went. Any discussion?
I have a question. What is Fuel Ed
It's just another virtual learning platform.
that McFarland uses specifically?
Yep, yep.
Is that new?
I don't know how long
No?
it's been around, but
Okay.
quite a while. No, it's not new, but I don't know how far back it dates.
So if we just to clarify, if we follow this and then they don't offer the course for some reason, like because there wasn't enough student enrollment or something like that, then does it go back so that they can take the course?
Yes, if it is, if there's time, certainly there's timelines for the college courses.
Yeah.
But yes.
Good. Okay.
And I would say, when I looked at this list, I didn't line it up with last year's list, but I felt like there were fewer denials. That was my eye, but certainly some of this can be averted with meetings in advance.
Okay.
I certainly appreciate the format that is used
Right.
because it's easy to read and interpret.
I agree.
Well, I think we can go ahead, do it. I'll wait for Bruce to get back. No, it's no
okay.
problem. We've got a motion and a second to approve the course approvals and denials for the early college credit and Start College Now program requests, as recommended by the high school administration. Do you have any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously, 5-0. Okay, next is action on second reading and adoption of policy 3112 and 4112, board staff communications. Administration recommends approval of the second reading and adoption of policies 3112 and 4112, board staff communications. I would look for a motion to approve the second reading.
I'll make that motion.
Thank you, Bruce. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Kate. Discussion?
I think the rewrite for these two policies is very appropriate. I think it's taken out the threatening language that I perceived as threatening language. And I think, you know, what has been revised now, I think it's much clearer and more in depth as far as issues with communication between board and teachers. So I appreciate those that worked on this.
And I think it's appropriate. Okay.
Thank you.
Hearing no more discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0 unanimously. Okay, next, action on first review of rescinding policy 5460.03, WEVA high school graduation requirements, and first reading of policies 5460.03, WEVA high school graduation requirements, 5460.04, Destinations Career Academy high school graduation requirements, and 5460.05, Insight School of Wisconsin high school graduation requirements. Administration recommends approval of the first review of rescinding policies and reading of replacement policies regarding Wisconsin Virtual Academy's graduation requirements. I would look for a motion.
Can I just, this is the first reading, right? So we can
Yep.
make comments on it?
We need a motion first.
Oh, do we need the motion first before? Okay. Well, then I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, Bruce.
Sorry.
I'll second.
Tom?
And we do have Dr. Cutler, who is available as well.
Okay, so, discussion.
Yeah, the only question, I don't necessarily know enough about it. I think, Tom, you could probably address this better than I. It seems that it's 20 credits is what's the necessary number of credits that the students have to take. Is that typical for a virtual school? Is that pretty? It just seems low to me. I don't know.
Well, the state minimum is 15. So when you think about just the range across the state of how many credits are needed for a high school diploma, it's really all board local control. It's absolutely local control. So since we are a statewide school and it varies, you know, our students come from every corner of the state, really you'll look at all three high schools very differently. And that's the big difference, is that we are trying to create identities of those 3 high schools separate from the original policy, which was just blanketed of all of them. And for WEVA, it's 4 credits of all 4 core areas, which isn't required by the state, but that is what we really, that's our bread and butter. That's kind of why kids come to us. And then for Destinations Career Academy, there are less core, but more CTE required. And then actually for Insight, we are recommending going all the way down to 15 credits because most of the students who come to Insight are seniors with less than 10, sometimes even 3 credits. And we only serve 250 students throughout the state, but truly those students would not graduate anywhere if they didn't come to us. So it's a big intervention for a small group of students. So yes, it is low, definitely lower than McFarland, but by the state requirement, it's significant.
Thank you. I just, I guess I really trust in your professional judgment on that. And it was just interesting because again, I taught in a brick and mortar school. So thank you very much.
Absolutely. I mean, myself as well. I've had to do a lot of research around high school credits across the state and what differs and why.
And sir, would that be correct to make the assumption that if a student was going for a GED, that would even be less amount of? Correct.
And we're working with Sherry Holly. I think she might even be a McFarland remnant somewhere, but she's at DPI, and and we're working with her as follows our alternative education and really all the different pathways to graduation. Our goal is to offer as many options for students across the state as possible. So even looking into GED2 programs within our high schools, because truly we're there to personalize the experience for any kid who needs a different experience. So yes, a GED would be a very different and minimal experience. It's a test out. It's a competency test out rather than seat time.
Yes, and Sherry Holly was an associate principal at the high school.
That's what I knew she.
Yes.
That's right. I knew I remembered the name.
Yeah.
Few years
Yeah, you
ago.
should remember that, Bruce.
I had a couple of questions regarding the Insight School. Just out of curiosity, I'm not really questioning anything, but I noticed, so the credit requirements are lower by just a couple credits. Is there a specific reason for that?
We're really, and again, this is working with Sherry, wanting to go all the way, as minimum as possible, so that we can support students in moving to graduation. Really, we don't want high school diploma to be a barrier for students who need to move on to their next step in life. Most of our Insight students, they qualify for an at-risk school because they're already parents. They may be adjudicated. They may be emancipated. So they're already they need a path to their next step. That's what we are providing, and they wouldn't get that in another way. So I hope you got the revised, because the board actually changed that and went down to 15 credits, not 18. So you would be approving a 15 credit requirement for Insight School rather than 18, and that is the state minimum. And what we believe again is that this particular high school is meeting that small niche. It's very regulated. It's an overseen. It's at risk, but it's offering students that diploma that will move them on to the next step of really their adulthood that some of them are already living.
Okay.
Did that answer your question, Megan?
Yes, it does. And then I just had one other question, which I think your answer pretty much covers. But I noticed that the career readiness education requirement also was removed from that policy. Is that just because they're already Well, I won't make any assumptions. You can answer.
From Insight?
Yes, from Insight.
From Insight, we still have the minimum career readiness, which is the matchmaker, personality style, and mission complete. So we went with the state statute minimum again. So we still really, actually, we're modeling so much of what we've learned at Insight with our more at-risk students in the other high schools, in particularly working on their personalized learning plan, which is, well, who do you want to, what plan, and those 3 key lessons. Also, the staff at Insight is kind of flipped. So there's double the amount of student services staff, including mentors and support systems, rather than the core classes. There's only 3 core teachers, and then many students use credit recovery programming.
Got it. Okay, thank you. That was very helpful.
Point out that in your packet, it appears that for Insight, it says 18 credits. So that should be corrected to 15, but then when it breaks them down, that is accurate. It adds up to 15. So it was just one extra little change there that was made over the course. So I would hate for us to miss the opportunity.
That's good.
And my apologies, it might be, I sent you the wrong link. I don't know. That just got changed at our board policy. So, and we're just now doing board docs and having it live on our website. So this is exciting for us that you can go straight to our website and use that system.
I think that's great. Any other questions?
Sarah, how many of those 250 students in Insight have IEPs?
It's about the same, actually. It's about 30%. I mean, well, it's still high, between 20 and 30%. But our school does average around, all of our schools average around 20% of students with IEPs. And actually, when we do our parent surveys and satisfaction indicators, it is the families with students with disabilities who have the highest marks for coming to our schools, because they needed something different for their students more than anything. So it's slightly higher, but not much.
Anything else?
No, again, being on the liaison between our board and your board, your staff is to be commended also. The work that they put in and the time. I know over the years, things have shifted and been revised to the benefit of students. So
That's right.
really glad to see.
That's right. I mean, these policies are just really to support students in the different opportunities and personalized plans that we can provide and offer.
Good.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the input. I've got a motion and a second for action on the first review of the rescinding policies. Hearing no other discussion, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. It's unanimous. And lastly, I've got action on recommended WEVA, Destinations Career Academy and Insight School, Wisconsin Statute 118.408G, student transfers to resident districts. At this time, WEVA, Destinations Career Academy, and Insight School of Wisconsin are requesting approval of recommended student transfers back to their resident districts due to a lack of engagement. Do I have a motion?
Also move.
Okay.
I think
Thank
that's
you.
it.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Megan. Discussion?
Oh, Sarah's not here. Okay. No discussion on my behalf.
Okay.
I think you should
She's
still
there.
hear.
Oh, Sarah.
I think
Just,
Sarah's still there.
Hey, Sarah. Last time, I think at the board meeting, you had talked about you're going to try to provide what WEVA does to re-engage students so they don't have to be on the list that we see here. Can you sort of elaborate on that a bit more?
Yeah, I haven't come up with a good way to share that with you yet. The majority of, it's a small number. It usually is pretty small this time of year comparative to as it grows throughout the year. The biggest chunk is our students right there. And those are students who we actually did not ask for removal in the spring and kept them on, hoping that we could re-engage them. So we even gave them all summer and until now, until we couldn't re-engage with supports. There is one elementary student on there, and we have a list of interventions that have come forward to that student, and working still on sort of the format to send that to you, if it would just like how much detail you need. And maybe Tom, I should link with you because don't want to send your board 5 spreadsheets of all the pieces we've done. But if we could meet between now and the 20th, and you could advise, or you and Aaron could advise me on exactly the format that we might present those levels. What we basically have is a spreadsheet of the number of times we've contacted, the number of ways we've contacted. We have an elevated system of letters that go out, and an early intervention system as well that's been implemented.
Yeah, we get some of that information now, Sarah. It's that intervention piece that I'd be interested in knowing more about some type of.
So more, yep.
Anything else? If not, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. It's unanimous. And at that, I would look for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Kate? Who's second? I got a second?
I'll second.
Megan?
I think
Gotcha.
everybody's second.
I've lost twice. Gotcha. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned at, oh my goodness, 9:42.
It's better than what I had expected.
Well,